So I'll introduce everybody right now, and then we'll see them one at a time as well. So with me this morning is Superintendent of Schools Paul Finch. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming budget vote. And because there are some library propositions on our ballot this year, we also have with us representatives from the Red Hook Library, Erica, and Barry might want to say, our own Barry Ramage might want to say a word or two during this, I'm not sure. And then from the Tivoli Library, Felicia Keesing is here with us. So why don't we bring up Paul, and we'll talk just briefly. We can do this in 15 seconds, but we'll give you a slightly longer version than that here this morning. We'll talk a little bit about the school budget and what we've done.
So first I want to ask, where are the, I'm not getting in front of the camera yet, where are the happy dollars today?
Afterwards.
Afterwards, okay, because my wife's back to work after a 10-year hiatus. And I'm going to put a happy dollar in for that, and a happy dollar hoping she comes back from work so that I don't have to play Mr. Mom anymore. Now I truly understand what she's been through. Good news on the budget. Well, before I even do that, let me talk about some things that we have to be really proud of in Red Hook. So a couple of recent things. You know, we've got students this year that were accepted into Harvard, Yale, and Cornell. So we've never had all three in one year, so we're really happy about that. And you know, that's just a little piece of what's happening with our kids in their post-secondary plans. Really great. You know about our basketball team. You may not know that New York State is in the process of identifying master teachers, and recently they identified 17 master teachers in the Mid-Hudson region, and we had 6 of them. So about 35%. So we have a lot to be proud of in Red Hook. On the budget front this year, it's good news. We had a 1.75% increase on the expenditure side. That translates into a 2.02 tax levy increase. That said, it looks like the governor, in theory, is going to send rebate checks to local taxpayers for that 2.02% increase. And I say in theory because that's what they're saying they're going to do. So since we stayed under the cap at 2.02, you should experience a tax freeze of sorts this year. But again, I will say in theory because I am not personally, Bruce and I are not making sure you get that check. That's up to the governor. You know, we have other propositions out there. We've got the bus proposition. It's a standard bus proposition, a big bus, several smaller vehicles. We try to keep our buses on a 10-year replacement cycle, and we've been fortunate that the voters have understood that that's important. We put about 450,000 miles on our buses every year. That's a lot. It's a lot of mileage. So we're not quite at the 10-year mark. We're a little over that, but we're trying to get as close to that mark as we can in a 10-year replacement cycle. We have 2 seats up for the Board of Education. We have 4 people running for those seats. Brian McCann and Dawn Morrison, they're the incumbents. They are running. We have Heldia Tulsit and Maggie Rothwell also interested in becoming board members. So 4 people interested for 2 seats. I don't have much more to say. I mean, it's a really pretty short story this year. The board gave us our charge, came out of the gate saying, maintain everything and stay under the cap. And these things don't play well together, as you know, so we had about a $750,000 structural deficit we needed to overcome. I did that 3 ways. We had some increased state aid, about $270,000 of additional state aid when the legislature settled the budget. Legislature, excuse me. We had three retirements district-wide, and we're not replacing one staff member, 4th grade teacher, and that's a really function of enrollment decline, so we won't see any programmatic really impact there. And we took some savings again. And again, this can't go on forever. We've been talking about this every year. You know, we pull a little bit out of our savings every year, and at some point, something's got to give. Either it's, program, or we decide to override the cap, or do something else. But we'll get some mandate relief, which is really a big thing. What did I forget?
I think you got almost everything. I can remind you of a couple of important dates coming up. If you'd like to hear the longer version of this, that would be tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's the public hearing at 7:00 p.m. That happens in the 3-5 cafeteria at Mill Road. The following Wednesday, on the 14th of May, if you know someone who would like to vote in the school district election but is not registered, there is a registration day, and that's between the hours of noon and 9 p.m. and that happens at the Mill Road 3-5 lobby. It's also possible to vote in the school election if you're registered under the county procedure, but at this point we're bumping up on the deadline for that. So if they want to just vote in the school election and they're not registered, they should come on May 14th and get registered. And then finally, the statewide budget vote date is May 20th, and we will be voting in Red Hook from noon to 9 in the Mill Road 3-5 gymnasium. And so I think that's pretty much all we have to say from the school side.
So before we, just to review, we're under the cap at 2.02, and in theory, taxpayers should get a rebate check for that increase. And then next year, this is part of a larger plan by New York State to force districts to consolidate services more. So I don't know if you want to mention
Yep. So,
what that might look like.
Yep. So the governor and the legislature each had versions of this tax freeze going on as they came into the budget this year. And what they landed on was this methodology that we've begun to describe, which is if the local municipalities and school districts do certain things, their taxpayers will get a rebate check for the amount of their tax increases. So this year the requirement is that we stay under the tax cap, which we've done. Next year there's an additional requirement added, and so next year, in order for the taxpayers to get that rebate check to freeze their taxes, the district and the other local municipalities will have to stay under the tax cap and get a state-approved consolidation of services efficiency savings that represents 1% of the budget. Now, the rules related to this are pretty muddy at this point. It's not really clear what the specific rules are surrounding this savings plan, this efficiency plan. It's not clear what will qualify. It's not clear what the definition of savings will be. That's all still coming together, the details. But for this year, we met our obligation of staying under the cap, and in theory, the rebate checks will come out. Next year, we will have to look again at staying under the cap and having an approved efficiency plan if our local taxpayers are to get that rebate check.
Any question?
So,
What's your enrollment projection?
Right now, it's 1,985 students. And the projection is for us to stay relatively steady, maybe a slight decrease out to 2019.
Just be a comment. Just be careful with these muddy rules, because I can tell you from my industry that what happens is they change the rules every single year. Every time you find a way to comply with the current rules, they change the rules, so you're now out of compliance again, and then you get a second year opportunity to maybe get back into compliance, and then they change the rules again. So it's going to be a moving target.
Paul, my youngest, of course, has been out of the Red Hook schools for almost 10 years, so I'm a little out of touch with this, but you hear a lot of things in the news about teaching to the test and parents telling their children they don't have to take a test. What is that all about?
So we have a little movement afoot. Well, how do I? So let me take a step. Let me take a couple steps back. So the state adopted something called the Common Core Learning Standards, and so these are a more rigorous set of standards. And depending on the type of student you will have different opinion of the standards. In my own case, I think it's been a good stretch for my kids. If you have students who struggle with the existing standards. The new standards are much more difficult, and they require much more support, not only from the school but on the parent side of things. And some people believe that the standards are too high, unrealistic, and the tests that are matched to those standards are inappropriate, and you have a small but vocal group of people who are out there encouraging their students to opt out of the exams. There is no opting out mechanism in New York State. There's a student can refuse to take an exam, but what it's doing is it's really putting kids in a really awkward position, because you've got the adults having a disagreement over something, and the kids get stuck in the middle, having to decide, you know, do I refuse? Do I say to my teacher I'm going to refuse? And then what does that do for those students longer term? You know, some of the questions around, you know, when you get to the SAT, if it still exists, then are you going to say I opt out? And they're going to say, well, you can't opt out of it, you know. So there are these conversations going on. But so here, a lot of it, also in the middle of all this, is the teacher evaluation piece. So the teacher evaluation is also, to some extent, based on the test scores, and so that's intertwined with it all. And you know, there's truth on all sides, I guess, is my opinion on the thing. And it really depends on, as a parent, on your particular student and their situation and the teacher that you have, and whether or not they're taking sort of a nuanced approach to implementing these standards. If you have a teacher that's sensitive and adapting appropriately, you tend not to have you know, problems. But if you are in a different situation, it can be tough. I don't know if that answers the question.
It explains it, certainly.
As a follow-up to that, does this not put both the low-functioning students who tend to have low-functioning parents, well, at a major disadvantage, and in addition, the teachers who have predominantly low-functioning students, particularly in schools that are predominantly low-functioning students? Doesn't it put them at a major disadvantage in terms of their school evaluation?
That's one of the arguments. That's one of the arguments. In theory, the evaluation tool from the state is supposed to adjust for those factors. In theory.
If there are no more questions on our side, because they're on our ballot, we have a representative from the Red Hook Library and also from the Tivoli Library here to talk about their propositions. And so I guess in the order in which they're on the ballot, Erica, would you like to say a couple of words about the library proposition?
I'm going to say more than a couple of words. I have a whole presentation, so let me just get this. Construct the world's most elaborate obstacle course here first.
I guess while we're getting set up here, as I think all of you know, I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the library, and I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for your ongoing support over the years of the library and its programs. And as you may know, we're in the process of working on an early literacy grant through the Rotary Foundation that we're hopeful to receive matching funds from the district, and that'll be some exciting programming that we'll get you some more details on as we proceed. But as we get set up here again, I just want to thank you all for your ongoing support.
I think that might be better just for this against.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. Those of you who don't know, I'm Erica, and I'm the director of the library. I'm very pleased to be so. And I'm here today to tell you about, oops, you can see, let's get this. Everyone wants to know why are we asking for funding? And I will tell you that my Board of Trustees did not come to this decision lightly. While I love what I do and wouldn't want to do anything else, my least favorite thing is to have to come out and ask people for money, and especially to raise taxes. That's not what we want to do. But we're asking for an increase in funding, which will take place May 20th at the school district, because basically we've been growing exponentially and our funding has not kept up with it. I want to make clear that our money is not actually going through the school district, just acts as our collection agency. So it's not part of their budget. It's a separate proposition, and we're proposition 3. So, and also let you know, we actively apply for grants, accept donations, and benefit from the talents of a robust community of volunteers. But since 2010, there's been a significant increase in the community's use of library services. Without an increase, we're going to look at having to reduce the number of days and hours we're open, the number of programs offered, eliminate some of the current services, and reduce the number of items available for borrowers. We don't want to do that. So it's kind of crooked, but if you can tell. So what are we talking about when we talk about our increase in usage? And here you can see what's been happening over the past couple of years since 2010. Visits to the library have increased by 524%. Borrowers are sharing 31% more materials, and usage of our computer and wireless has increased by 28%. And while some of us might find it hard to imagine, there's still a number of people in our community that do not have computers or access to the internet at home. So the library is their primary place where they can come and get online or get access to wireless and do any number of things, including also get tech help, which we've provided. And we're really proud because we started a program about 3 years ago using some of our teen volunteers to offer tech help to anybody who came in on Saturdays. When the county cut our funding to libraries, because we used to get a certain amount of funding, several $1,000s a year for summer reading program, and they switched to having a small pool of money that all the nonprofit agencies had to apply for grants. And Dutchess County Libraries were trying to figure out what to do. I said, well, hey, we've got this really great program. It seems to be popular with teens helping seniors or whoever else wants to learn about libraries. Why don't we use that for the basis of a grant? And we did, and so now it's offered countywide, so that's really exciting.
Do they make house calls?
I really discouraged them from doing that, but I caught one doing it.
Oh, is that right?
But for liability issues
Right.
and safety reasons, absolutely not. But you can bring your computer in.
Okay, deal.
And they'll help you with ebooks or whatever you want. And I have to say, the kids are really, really amazing. It's really great. So we pride ourselves on being a place where everyone is welcome to come learn, engage their passions, and meet their friends and neighbors. We don't just hang out in the library waiting for people to come to us. We like to be out in the community, active and engaged. And I think most of you have probably been, or feel like you've been stalked by me at various times. As you know, we collaborate with a number of community organizations, including the Rotary, the Chamber of Commerce, Bard College, Red Hook Central School District, and the village and town, the police. We did the egg hunt. We started with Bard and with Red Hook Central School District the annual volunteer fair, which is a lot of fun. And with Red Hook Camp, we do the Read Local Red Hook Literary Festival. So we've doubled the number of programs we offer to the public in the past 4 years, and attendance has increased 97% in response. People have come to learn to knit, speak Italian and Mandarin Chinese, excavate mastodons, find jobs, learn about science, attend story times, and do hundreds of other things. We're happy to report the community really seems to enjoy what we offer. Last year, more than 9,500 people came to programs, but we're not content to rest there. I would like to see that number double in the next couple of years. We really want everybody into the library. We've been very busy in the past couple of years. Since 2010, we've completed the addition to our building, making the full building ADA accessible, and we renovated the ground floor, which is now a really beautiful children's library, and seen a ton of growth in our children's programs and attendance. And our next step, which will be unveiled this Saturday at Apple Blossom Day, 1 p.m. Everybody's invited to the grand opening of our children's library. And of course, it would be great to stop there, but we're not. So our next thing is to look at the top floor of our library, which has not been touched in a long time and needs basic things like HVAC, electric, upgrade, so we can put data drops for computers and create a nice meeting space. So that's our plan, and I'm hoping to get about 70,000 in grants this year toward that. Our doors were open for patrons more than 2,600 hours last year, and a good thing too, because we had more than 237,000 visits. Our little staff couldn't handle the demand alone, and so we're happy to say we have a core of more than 20 volunteers who spent more than 1,200 hours helping out the library. So what are we asking for? We're asking for an additional $70,000 each year in funding. For an average homeowner whose home is assessed at $250,000, it'll cost an additional $11.46 a year, or a little bit less than $1 a month. The money will be used to cover the rising cost of utilities, to maintain our historic building, to pay fees to the Mid-Hudson Library System, and to maintain and expand technology and staffing levels. Now let me explain what the fees are. The fees to the Mid-Hudson Library System are some things that happened it was voted on in 2010. It started in 2011 because the state cut funding to library systems. So, and the fees are assessed based on circulation. And while we are a small library, we're in the top 12 of the 66 member libraries. We're in the top 12 of circulation. We're in the top 9 for programming and programming attendance. We're in the bottom third for funding, but our fees to Mid-Hudson are more than $10,000 a year based on our metrics. So that's a lot of money for us. That's a big chunk of our budget. And that's one of the things that we hadn't anticipated in 2010 because we didn't know it was coming. So that's one of the reasons why we need more money. So this shows you the relationship between the cost of the community and the value of the community. The community spends $250,000 on Red Hook Public Library. It borrows material equaling more than $1.7 million, which is basically a 596% return on the investment. And that is just for the hard materials, the books, the DVDs, audiobooks, all of that. And we average that out. The way we come to the value is by a rough generalized figure of $20 per item, which is a conservative number. And it does not factor in the value of programs or program attendance. So I want to end with saying thank you so much for relying on us. Your support and use of Red Hook Library is so extraordinary that we managed to earn stars every year in Library Journal. Last year we awarded 5 stars, which is the highest designation you can get. And this spring, we're very happy to say that out of the 9,000 plus libraries in the country, we're one of 10 chosen to receive a Libraries Transforming Communities grant from the American Library Association and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we're really proud of the work we're doing and we want to continue it. And thank you so much for your time. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And everyone's going to come to the library if you haven't, right? Great, thank you.
I would be that guy.
And just a quick reminder that 1 o'clock on Saturday will be the dedication of the children's learning garden on Apple Blossom Day. Please attend. We're expecting a large turnout of kids.
Well, Erica Unplugged, I'm going to hand out a few brochures representing the Tivoli Free Library. My name is Felicia Keesing. For those of you I didn't get a chance to meet one-on-one, hello. In my other life, when I'm not representing the Tivoli Library, I am the chair of the biology department at Bard College. And you will see my scientific inclinations because when the lights go off, I'm going to actually resort to drawing graphs on paper. That's what we scientists like to do. So I will show you that in just a moment. It is there. Paul has recognized that the lovely boy on the front of the brochure is actually the son of the Tivoli mayor, which was a complete coincidence.
But he does have Tivoli tie-dye.
There were many wonderful reasons for that choice.
There you go.
So the Tivoli Library has its own version of the kind of growth that the Red Hook Library has gone through, and I'm going to try to just represent that for you graphically. I'm going to see if I can make it work on this screen. So our growth really started in 2007. Up until then, we'd had a pretty steady use of our programs and our services and all that. But starting in 2007, demand for the library started to go up and up and up and up and up, and it continues to this day in 2014. Challenging. So this represents demand for the services, for programs, for using our books, for getting help from our librarians, and also, as Erica mentioned, we get tremendous demand on our technology. We particularly saw, after the economic downturn in 2008, a huge increase in the use of our internet services and our wireless access. A lot of people had gone through a process of cutting back at home and used the library as a resource instead for access to the internet and Wi-Fi. Part of the reason for our growth in 2008 was starting in 2007 was through the economic downturn, but a lot of it was that we had gotten tremendous support from the voters. So up until 2007, we had a fairly flat income, but in 2007, the voters of the town of Red Hook voted us a fairly sizable increase that allowed us to begin this process of growth. And we have had an absolutely flat budget that entire time. So through this period of tremendous growth, the budget has been flat. What you can see here is that for the first few years of our increase in demand, we had a surplus of our budget, and we were very careful to stockpile those funds so that we could then, when our demand exceeded our flat income, we could actually use that surplus to cover the gap. But we've now completely used up the surplus, and so where we are now is what we think of as our fiscal cliff, right? We're at this point in demand, but we have this income and we've used up our surplus. So what we're asking the voters for on May 20th is to decide whether they want to cover that gap so that we can stay essentially at this level, meet this level of demand as we go forward. And I'd point out that when we asked for the voters for funding in 2007, we promised them that we would make the funding last for at least 5 years. We've made it stretch out for 7 years through thrift and grants and donations and fundraising and that kind of thing. But we can't stretch any further. So what we're saying now is, look, if we can get an increase in funding now with this level of increase, we can make that stretch for at least 5 years, and we'll do our very best to make it last longer than that. So that's our story in a nutshell. We are asking for $55,000, which comes out to basically $9 a year for a household valued at $250,000. It's something like 75 cents a month per household. And we have an informational meeting next Monday, May 12th at 7 p.m. at the Tivoli Free Library. And that's our story, as trim as I can make it. I'd be happy to answer questions.
I've got a question for both of you. So this additional money that you're asking for is the same program that the voters approved several years ago, or is this in addition to the money that's already being given to the libraries through the taxes?
It's in addition to the money that we have already requested. Barry and Eric and I could tell you stories about the Byzantine funding structures for libraries, but essentially there are two different mechanisms. One is called a 259 and the other is called a 414. Mm-hmm. This funding request is through the 259 mechanism, which is, as Erica mentioned, collected by the schools and distributed through them. So that's what this increase would be. This increase back here for us was through the other mechanism, the 414 mechanism. Yep. And this one addresses just town taxpayers bounded by the lovely rectangle that is the town of Red Hook. This one, the 259 mechanism, addresses the school district, which Paul and Bruce could tell you is anything but rectangular. It has tendrils and tails heading off in all different directions, so it's actually a bigger population. It's all of the town of Red Hook plus Claremont, where we had the pleasure of speaking last night, and off into Milan, and even actually down a little bit into Red Hook. So this one spreads the tax burden across a bigger area.
question also for both of you. I understand how the costs increase for utilities and the fees to the Mid-Hudson Library System. How does an increased traffic increase the costs of running a library?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, when we've seen this increase in demand, it basically, what it means is that we can offer more. That's the first way that it happens, right? The funding increase for us here allowed us to be open more. So we used to have these incredibly erratic, I thought it was like a patchwork quilt of hours. We tried to cover everybody on one day or another, but we slowly started adding hours, trying to not over gauge what people would use the number of hours that people would use the library. What we found is the more hours we added, traffic never slowed down during those hours, if that makes sense. The more we added, the more the public came. And the same thing with programs. We used to have a couple of programs a week, right? And we kept adding programs thinking at some point attendance would go down, and attendance just keeps going up per program, not just overall reflected by the program. So the way I like to think of it is that the taxpayers have essentially been voting with their feet all this time, and now we're asking them to vote with their pocketbooks as well to help us sustain that growth.
So what you're saying is that if you increase budget, you may increase hours and therefore increase traffic some more. If you don't increase hours, do you increase your budgetary needs by the same amount of money as just maintaining current services with obviously certain costs that will go up that have to be covered?
So let me say for us, I think the answers for the two libraries might be different. So from the Tivoli side, very briefly, we have had this tremendous growth. We don't want to increase the number of hours right now. We're open the way we want. And we've basically got a program every single day we're open, and often multiple programs. So we're not trying to actually grow the number of programs, the number of hours. So actually our projected budget out here is basically just looking for the kind of cost of living increases going out. We're not looking for this kind of growth to continue. We expect fairly stable growth, and this projected out 5 years is about 2% under some kind of cap, right? About 2% a year going out. So we expect this to taper off. We simply can't grow anymore. We might see attendance continuing to go up, but we don't expect our number of hours and our costs to go up dramatically at this point. They can't. We don't have anywhere to grow.
We're in a very different position because we own the building we're in, we have to pay to maintain that, and we pay utilities and all those things. But we're also not looking to expand hours. What we're looking to do is to be able to continue to do what we're doing, and that's why we need the money. Although I will say, I do want to continue to expand. I mean, I feel like we're just starting to hit our stride, but where we are now, I hope to come back in a couple of years and tell you that we've doubled all of our numbers. Like, I want to part of what's going on right now is that we are stretched so tightly. We really have a skeletal staff. I'm the only person that's full-time. We have 8 other adult staff members who work between 12 and 18 hours a week. And we have 5 amazing pages, we call them pages. They're our teens, and they work between 2 and 5 hours a week. So we really, like I said, we use volunteers for 12 hours a year. So we're staffing at the absolute bare bones level. One of our challenges is that, for those of you who've been to our library, we're in this great mid-19th century octagon, but we have our main floor, which is most of the adult stuff in our teen room, and then the children's library is on a different level. So we need to have both of those, we need to have somebody on both of those levels at all times. One of the things we want to do, and that there's a demand for in the community, is to provide, everybody keeps saying they want community space, they want space for meetings. Right now we meet in what was, excuse me, getting over bronchitis. The third floor had traditionally been an apartment where the librarian lived for many years, and then was now it hasn't really been converted over. So our meeting space is the old kitchen. We have a hole in the ceiling. There's just some basic infrastructure things that we need to do. And it's a mid-19th century building, so with the needs of technology, we need to do things like update our electric. Sometimes you need a 3-pronged plug, not a 2-pronged plug. And we are a growing library. When we see the demand, when we offer the one-on-one job help, I mean, we cannot offer enough sessions. You know, when we were doing the signups for the Affordable Care Act, every single session was jammed. So it's just that there's a lot of need in our community, and we're just trying to meet that the best we can. But I know we can do more. So I hope that answers it.
And a quick conclusion.
Let me just say very briefly that the last time I spoke at a Rotary, I was 15 years old and I had received some wonderful scholarship, the details of which I can't remember. And I just want to say that I was absolutely terrified last time. It's such a pleasure to be so much less terrified. I like to think that somehow the early training I got at Rotary helped prepare me for this big day. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you to our patient of our beautiful plastic wrapped thank you mugs for safekeeping. Erica,
Oh, thank you so much.
thank you so much. This is your Rotary mug to proudly put on your desk.
Thank you, I
Plus,
will.
your invitation to consider you yourself becoming a Red Hook Rotarian. I can juggle here, my goodness. I
Well,
need
any
help.
chances of you moving your meetings to like, I don't know, after work?
We can talk, because
8 p.m.-ish?
7:30 in the morning is a little hard for me too. Anyway, but I would love for you to consider it, and
I certainly
we can talk. Excellent, excellent.
I can just stay
Next
up.
up, my dear, your plastic wrap.
Thank you, I will cherish it.
And your invitation to consider becoming a Red Hook Rotarian for not only your library experience, but for your bar experience, because that would be a wonderful addition to our club. So
You'll have to speak every 2
and
months.
yes, you have to come every day. You see that we have a very good time, so come on down. And lastly, Paul,
I don't think I have a blue one.
and your invitation to consider becoming a Red Hook Rotarian.
Absolutely well, thank you for having me.
Thank you very, very much. It is our
Who says he'll
pleasure.
pay your dues?
Nice.
Okay, so now the 50-50. And